Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to OP Radio. My name is Mac. I'm a content strategist at OP Labs. If you only hear one thing, if you only listen to part of this episode, it should be this. 30 million OP is being allocated for retroactive public goods funding, round number 3. Applications are open now. You can apply at app.optimism.io/RetroPGF-sign up. Application deadline is October 23rd, 2023. If you're like me and you tend to procrastinate, I recommend just getting in there and applying right now so you don't forget about it. You know, at this point, why wouldn't you? Especially if it's for work that's already been done. That's the retroactive part of retroactive public goods funding. Why not just take 10 minutes to apply and potentially get some of this 30 million OP? So we're really lucky today because we have the wonderful Jonas with us today, the RetroPGF Lead. Good morning, Jonas. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing very well. I'm super excited that we finally got the applications live for round 3.
Absolutely. It's very exciting. I'm not sure if people really fully understand the huge opportunity that this represents, but hopefully at the end of this space, they will, right?
Hopefully, if I don't confuse them, they will understand more after this episode.
Yeah, if we do our jobs right?
Exactly.
Okay, so actually, before we get into the main topic, which is RetroPGF Round 3, Jonas, do you want to just share maybe something personal about yourself? I hate to put you on the spot, but
yes,
I know you're an interesting guy, and I'm sure the people on OP Radio would love to know. Anything you want to share?
Yes, I totally wasn't prepared for this. I'm Jonas. I'm living in Berlin. I'm fully in love with this idea of retroactive public goods funding. And if we can find new ways to fund the contributions and the public goods that we all depend on and come up with more effective coordination tools, I feel like we could not only make a big impact for Optimism or the crypto ecosystem, but the world at large.
I love that. But you didn't really answer my question, Jonas. Instead, you answered my next question, which is, what is RetroPGF? But that's fine. I think that was a great description of what RetroPGF is. So I love that. And so let's get into the details of round 3. As I mentioned, there's 30 million OP that's going to be allocated in round 3. All right. So that's up from RetroPGF Round 1, which was $1 million. I believe that was in stable coins. And then round 2 was 10 million OP. Now, round 3, we've tripled it to 30 million OP. So, Jonas, who is eligible for this?
Yes. The main theme of this round is contributions that support the development and adoption of optimism. So that is a super broad statement that could come in all types of shapes and forms. So if you're a builder or a creator or an educator that has done something that's been impactful to the Optimism Collective, you are eligible for this round and you should sign up.
Yeah, I want to speak to sort of the breadth of this, Jonas, because I'm not sure everybody quite fully gets that, right? I mean, it really is quite broad. And we have these 4 different categories we do have these categories in round 3, right? So we've got the contributions to the OP stack, to the collective governance, to the developer ecosystem, as well as end user experience and adoption. But, there's a lot that fits in those 4 categories. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, it might not, I would say that a lot of things, if you've made a positive impact to the Optimism Collective, will likely fit into one of these 4 categories. Now, I'm not saying everything will, but I'm saying that that's a pretty broad description of who's potentially eligible.
Yes. I think easiest to understand how all these contributions fit in is looking at the projects that were rewarded in the last round, in round 2. And if you go over this long list, I think we had 195 projects last round. Over this long list, you find we have everything in there from developer tooling to contributions to the OP stack, to Ethereum clients and education. There are like a lot of great projects which are part of this. And really the core idea here is if you're doing work that is impactful, that people rely on, or people leverage that are part of the Optimism Collective, you should sign up. And I think that the best inspiration, if you're not sure if you should sign up, is go look at the projects from round 2, and I'm sure you will find something that is like similar to what you're contributing to the collective.
That's fantastic advice, Jonas. And for people who are interested in doing that, go ahead and head to optimism.mirror.xyz. That's Optimism's Mirror blog, and you can find all these different posts for the different RetroPGF rounds, and you'll find links to the recipients of those rounds in those posts. I think that's really good advice. And again, if you're listening, you're like, oh, I can't be bothered to kind of go and spend a few minutes looking at who received from last round. I mean, I think it's really in your best interest too, if you've made a positive impact in the Optimism Collective, because some of these projects and recipients from round 2, they got a lot of OP for their efforts.
Yes, and I think even further, you can not only think about yourself and your own contributions, but you can also think about the contributions of others that you know of, right? Like, what are the tools that you interact with when you use Optimism, or what are educational resources you've relied on in your Web3 journey? You can also think about, like, what are the things the public goods that you rely on and that you think are great, and then encourage these people to sign up. I think it really makes spreading this awareness to projects you care about also makes a big difference, and possibly helps them to get to a more sustainable model of operations.
Absolutely. Jonas, a thought occurs to me, which is, a huge part of RetroPGF is in my mind, it's this idea that at Optimism, we've really realized that, we cannot do this alone. We've got this huge, massive, ambitious vision. And there's really an understanding that it's going to take a lot of different people, a lot of different projects together, working together, coordinating to achieve and accomplish that. And I see RetroPGF as a way to incentivize people to do that. And it's really cool, because if you decide you want to participate and you want to build in the Optimism ecosystem and you create a positive impact, you then apply for RetroPGF, and there's a chance that you could be a recipient.
Yes, 100%. Mac, this is why I picked the song in the beginning, because it's all about how you can't do it alone, but you can only do it as a collective, and you need to coordinate. And I think that's really the main theme. We're trying to band a big group of humans together with a common goal and iterate towards the future we want to live in.
Absolutely. And it's one thing to say, hey guys, we can't do this alone, do it with us, and not really provide anything in return. But the cool thing about this is, like, oh, well, you're going to get rewarded for this.
Yes. So this is, I think, the really great thing about RetroPGF is not only you get rewarded for the contributions you make to the collective based on how impactful they've been, so how useful people found your contribution, but also you don't need to ask for permission. If you have something in mind that you think would be great to do, or would be highly needed or highly impactful, you can just go and do it without asking anybody for permission to do it. And then later on, you can come back and receive RetroPGF rewards for it.
Yeah, we often talk about this concept of permissionlessness in crypto, right, Jonas? Where, a smart contract will execute on its own without a third party. But this is almost another meaning to that word, where, you don't need to submit a resume to contribute to the Optimism Collective. You can just get started, and then there is the potential down the road that you will get rewarded for those efforts.
Exactly. So we're really, if you think of, right, like what do things often look like in the real world, is you go through some bureaucracy to make something happen, where you want to change something or you want to introduce something new, and you have to go through all these parties to get their approval to get it going. And in this model, what we're trying to do is you can just be free and build the things you think are useful. And we want to make RetroPGF rewards really reliable and predictable, so that if you build something useful for the collective, you will receive these RetroPGF rewards.
Yeah, I almost see it as this, like, parallel economy, a more optimistic economy, if you will.
Exactly. I think this is what I often go to, is like, this is the third round, right? The second round ended in March of this year, and there's going to be a lot more rounds in the future. We're going to do this over and over and over again, giving out these retroactive rewards. And so we hope that we are able to iterate on this process and how the system works for it to become highly reliable and be like this really good what people call like an impact oracle. So like the highly reliable way to measure how impactful something was. And if we do this well, it becomes really predictable for builders and contributors, and really easy to understand the rewards that they will receive for their contribution.
Yeah, that predictability is important, right? Because it's one thing if it's just this sort of one-off that you weren't expecting, but if you know that it's predictable, you can sort of count on it in the future. So that's an important point you just made, Jonas. Jonas, I think there were like a common question after we announced the applications were open yesterday is people were asking, where do these rewards come from? Do you want to settle that?
Sure. So a big part of the optimistic vision, if you've read this beautiful document, is funding public goods and making that sustainable, and like breaking this myth that public goods cannot be profitable. We are really committed to this, and as such, 20% of the total OP token supply is reserved for retroactive public goods funding. So I think in total, this is around like 800 million OP tokens. And so this is where the allocation of this round is coming from. So we have a long way to go with this 20% allocation, but that is not the only thing, right? Like that wouldn't be sustainable if we only take OP from the total token supply. Where these RetroPGF rewards are coming from for future rounds is protocol surplus revenue. So every time you transact on OP mainnet or another OP chain that's part of the super chain, this is Base, this is Zora, this is Public Goods Network, and a bunch more. Every time you transact, part of that transaction revenue will be allocated towards retroactive public goods funding. And this is how we sustainably reward contributions to the Optimism Collective.
That's that public goods flywheel in motion.
Yes. The next thing, right? Like, why is this great? Which is, if we're able to do this and RetroPGF leads to more public goods, more contributions to the collective, that brings more value to users and builders. So that means, right, like more educational resources, better tooling that you can use as user, better frameworks for developers, et cetera, et cetera. And this should result in more demand for OP block space. So for the block space on OP mainnet and other chains in the superchain. And then we have more demand for block space, which means we have more RetroPGF rewards to allocate, and we get into this beautiful flywheel that is like supercharging the collective.
I love that, man. I'm feeling quite optimistic right now, Jonas. Once again, I want to let people know where they can go to apply. That's app.optimism.io/retropgf-signup. How long do you think application process takes, Jonas? About 10 minutes?
10 minutes, 15 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, 10, 15 minutes. I think, is there anything you want to let people know they should come prepared with when they go to apply?
Yes. I think it's really what is key here is help the voters in RetroPGF, the badge holders, understand the impact you had on the collective, because that is what they will use to decide how many RetroPGF rewards you should receive. So you should come prepared and think about how do you measure the impact of your contribution. An example is, right, like if you're running events, how many people are visiting your events? Or if you're like a great educator or writer, how many people are reading your article? Try to get towards like quantitative or qualitative metrics that help badge holders to understand how impactful and how useful your contribution has been. I think that's the single most important thing to consider in your application.
Yeah, I think that assessing the impact is one of the most challenging aspects of this. And I think that's great advice, Jonas, because one way to just kind of communicate that impact is with those quantitative metrics that you mentioned. So you can say, this blog post got this many views, this video got this many views, this many people have done this many transactions with this project. So that's one way to really show and demonstrate that your positive impact.
100%. Just to add kind of like what should you avoid doing is alluding to what you want to do in the future, right? I think this is like a really common thing because in all of the grants programs we are participating in today, it's mostly about future impact. But RetroPGF is really what you've done in the past and the impact this thing has already had. So if you do your application, don't talk about like your great audacious plans for the future, even though I think they're probably interesting to hear. Really focus on what you've done in the past and the impact this had in the past.
Talk is cheap, as they say, right, Jonas?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's much. You're gonna have a much better chance of being eligible for RetroPGF 3 if you can prove and demonstrate past impact, is what Jonas is saying. So yeah, no sort of speculating on what you'd like to do in the future or you plan to do shortly, but what have you actually done and can demonstrate? That's what we're interested in.
100%.
Okay, Jonas, I think we're close to winding this down. It's short and sweet. Folks, if you want to learn more about RetroPGF 3, we have some blog posts up at optimism.mirror.xyz, or you can just check the Twitter feed. Jonas, is there anything else you'd like to mention before we wind this thing down?
Be sure to sign up if you have contributed to the collective, and be sure to let your favorite contributors, your favorite public goods creators know about this program. And I hope, right, this is an iterative process. So we've made a lot of changes in round 3, and I hope we're going to see a big improvement in how we run this, and there are going to be a lot more rounds in the future.
Yeah, iterative process. I mean, already round 3 has changed a lot from round 2 and certainly from round 1. So it's been great just to see that evolution and that progress take place in real time.
Yes, there's a whole, I think we're not going to go down this. There's a whole rabbit hole. If you're interested in the mechanism itself, you can check out our doc side, previous mirror posts that we've done. As we try to be really transparent and showing what iterative steps we're taking to improve.
And what if people have feedback on round 3, Jonas? Where should they deliver that?
So if you have questions, you can jump into the Discord, into the RetroPGF discussion channel. There we will come and answer your question on the application and other things. If you have feedback, you can drop this there as well. If you have really detailed feedback, you can go into our governance forum and open a thread with your specific.
Amazing. Folks, I'm going to drop this URL one last third and final time because, as I mentioned, if you think that you may have contributed to the Optimism or Ethereum ecosystems in some way, why not just take 10 or 15 minutes to apply? I really don't know why you wouldn't, because you could potentially get a huge benefit from it. So that URL is app.optimism.io/RetroPGF-sign-up. Jonas, thank you so much for joining us again on OP Radio. Always a pleasure to have you, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Mac. See you guys.
Later.